Well, welcome to autumn, and welcome to our 9th storytelling in September. And what better way to celebrate than with 9 spectacular storytellers? So we'll begin with our Shakespearean bard, Dennis Glauber, who's been here from the beginning of storytelling. And his piece is a guide for the perplexed traveler. Dennis?
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, everybody. Guide for the perplexed traveler. Travel broadens the mind, but who does much of the broadening? The title of this essay is a tip of the hat to the great medieval thinker, philosopher, and physician Maimonides, whose masterwork is his Guide for the Perplexed. Recent conversations with 2 different friends were disturbing, as each expressed the dismal thought that their traveling days were now over. Having been fortunate enough to have traveled extensively over the decades, I felt encouraged by the feeling that for me, the next journey to far-off parts is still exciting and still within the bounds of possibility, at least physically, if not fiscally. And in that regard, dare I perpetrate the pun that Maimonides' days doesn't go as far as it used to? Ouch. Besides the fairly regular visits that Yvette and I make to family in the UK and Europe, we've been to the Far East and Australasia more than once, and in earlier days, my wife Ruth and I were able to make the grand tour of Europe, that is from our home in South Africa, for a 3-month period on 2 occasions in the 1960s, the latter including our first ever visit to the US. So the memories are abundant. And when I reflect on the highlights of so much travel, I'm intrigued by how so many memories hinge on tour guides. For example, while I recall many other highlights of our first visit to Copenhagen in 1960, the Tivoli Gardens, the Little Mermaid, the palaces, it's our guide's introductory quip that Danish isn't a language, it's an affliction of the throat that stands out. When I think about our visit to Milan in that same year of 1960, I naturally treasure having seen Leonardo's Last Supper and having visited La Scala, no performance alas, and the great cathedral, where building began about 8 centuries ago and is still underway. But what comes to mind most vividly is a delightful quip by our tour guide. Milan in 1960 was chaotic, the main streets being dug up for the building of the subway system, a project that had obviously been underway for several years. Everywhere were the signs showing MM, obviously standing for Metro Milano. But our guide wryly added that the letters really stood for the year that construction would actually be finished, maybe. Another occasion when the guide provided the best remembered experience was when Yvette and I were back in a South African game reserve, a regular haunt in our past days, but now for the first time as American tourists. We crowded together with a horde of mostly young Germans to listen to the words of the young lady who was our ranger guide. In her heavy Afrikaans accent, she said, "You may be wondering why I carry this rifle. You must understand that these animals are dangerous. So if you try to leave the vehicle when we make our stops, I'm going to have to shoot you." In Moscow, high up among the many memories is the tour of some of the stations in the vast metro subway system. Many are artistic masterpieces, which we're so glad to have visited. But what sticks in the memory is our guide Violetta's warning. There are 231 stations in the system, and if you don't stay close and keep your eyes on me, you could land up seeing every single one of them. When Yvette and I returned from Alaska to Seattle on our honeymoon in 1986, we traveled on a vessel of the Princess Line. The passengers were assembled for a general briefing by the purser. I still remember him saying, "This is a British vessel, and as you can see from the insignia on our uniforms, all the officers are British. But when you go down for dinner, you'll observe that all the kitchen and dining room staff and the cuisine are Italian." And then with a pause and exquisite timing, born of repetition, he added, "Aren't you glad it isn't the other way round?" Our trip to Ireland in 2015 provided the most remarkable guide that I have ever experienced, a true performance artist. In the town of Mullingar, our group of 9 assembled to meet our guide, a young man named Paul, who introduced himself and then apologized that he'd been called away and would hand us over to the care of a substitute called Mary, who would, he assured us, be more than competent in his place. She was, and when she led us to a square where there's a statue commemorating the site where James Joyce wrote part of Ulysses, there was a lone middle-aged man, waistcoated in early 20th century garb, sitting on the steps reading a book. He began to interrupt and heckle poor Mary. He soon took over and for several minutes lectured on Joyce as though he were the great writer himself. Despite the age disparity, he looked a bit like our departed guide Paul. It's a puzzlement. Further on the tour, Mary was discoursing on the historic old courthouse when she was rudely interrupted by a blue-beret uniformed soldier who took over the story. Obviously, Paul again in yet another disguise. And before the afternoon was over, Mary's disquisition outside the Protestant cathedral was completely disrupted by the dumb show antics of a crazed hooded Franciscan monk, who was, of course, Paul yet again. We learned so much from this remarkable guide, who later that evening joined us at the hotel and entertained us further with his own beautiful poetry. It was a different Irish guide in a different part of the country. He was memorable for his contention that guiding around Killarney was as easy as ABC, another bloody castle. But my favorite memory regarding our tour guides remains our experience of visiting the Carmelite monastery, Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel, in 1960. It was a fascinating and informative tour given by one of the monks. In typical brown robes and monk's tonsure, he could have sprung from a painting by Giotto or Raphael. He spoke excellent English in what we both recognized was a South African accent. So at the end of the tour, I asked him about his background, about which he was only too eager to talk. Yes, he was South African, a nice Jewish boy from Cape Town named Jack Friedman, who had graduated in medicine about 10 years before I did. It is to this day a surreal experience to recall how the two of us exchanged reminiscences. Did you know so-and-so? Of course, we were in the same class. And what's his name? Sure, we were after the same girl, but he won. This bizarre conversation continued deep in the bowels of a famous and profoundly Christian landmark. I regret that I never did find out how and why. Why did Dr. Jack Friedman become Brother Elias in a monastery thousands of miles and many light years away from his roots? In this regard, it was I who was the perplexed traveler in need of yet another guide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. What an amazing storyteller he is. I look forward to these just to listen to his stories. Well, next, our wonderful and what can I say, our angel sunshine.
Well, the name of my story, basically it's a combination of two poems. It's a New Day and My Patio Swing. So here goes. Early in January this year, I looked in the mirror. My face looked cross. I was frowning. I thought, I want to feel happy. Let me explain. I had many tasks, and my focus was on how much I had to do. This became a heavy load. I decided I was going to try to find joy in each little task I finished. This made a huge difference. One morning as I got out of bed, David said, "Please stay with me." Well, I had many things to do, but I crawled back into his arms where I snuggled and enjoyed precious minutes. Suddenly, my mind was ringing with a lovely melody and words I'd never heard. I didn't want to lose the melody or the words. "David, I have a new song and I need to write it down." I wrote the lyrics and tried to hum the tune. The basic idea was still intact. I wanted a song that would bring joy as we began 2021. The song did just that. The lyrics had a line about being near the ocean shore. So the next morning, I drove to Laguna Beach. I found a rock where I sat and enjoyed the sights and the sounds. I love it when ocean waves are crashing on the rocks and then they roll on into shore. But the sound, the sound is perfection. I took my phone and put on my video and started to record my song. There I am on the beach, recording my song. Then I listened. I pretty much captured the tune, and the accompaniment was the waves crashing in the background. It made me smile. When I arrived home, I sat at the piano and recorded the background music to support my voice. Then I uploaded it to my Sunshine Lutey YouTube channel. And this is how the song goes. I'm only going to sing part of it so I don't run over my 8 minutes. It's a new day. It's a new day, a new year. Wonder what it will bring. Yes, a new day, a new year. And I have a new song to sing. Perhaps I'll take a ride, walk near the ocean shore, get needed exercise, and let my spirit soar. It's a new day, a new year. Wonder what it will bring. It's a new day, a new year, and I have a new song to sing. Some stories I will find just waiting to be told in mind. I'm growing younger instead of growing old. It's a new day. I lie beside my love, hold on so very tight, enjoy each other every day. Oh yes, this feels so right. It's a new day. Ever since the pandemic started, I've been Zooming with my family every 2 weeks. Recently, we discussed how and when we exercise. I had totally lost my exercise program. My son Daryl commented, "Well, in the morning after I wake up, I make myself 2 cups of coffee. Then relax and enjoy. Then I exercise my dogs. So I get my exercise in, and finally I have my breakfast. This led me to write my patio swing. I remember the day we picked out our swing. It was delivered and set up. It was beautiful, but I almost never used it. It sat unused on the patio. The wind and the rain of several winters ripped the canopy to shreds. I looked at the ruined swing, so pitiful sitting there. I said, let's buy a new one. I love the idea of a patio swing. We bought another, but once again, the weather damaged the canopy. It sat on the patio in total disarray. I chose to ignore it because I never used it anyway. But it still bothered me. I thought about somehow replacing the top. Mentioned it to my friend, Anna Sue, who said, I could make a strong top for you. So she purchased the agreed upon material, pretty with green leaves, and I pulled the damaged canopy from the frame. She measured oh so carefully, and then spent hours cutting and sewing. She brought the finished product, and we stretched and pulled and got it onto the frame. And then we stepped back to enjoy the view. And there it is in its full glory. But it still sat unused until Daryl had shared his plan to enjoy coffee, then exercise before breakfast. He said, it works for me. So I decided to make a change. Now, each day, I prepare my coffee, take it out to my patio, and as I sway in my patio swing, I fill my body with needed caffeine and fill my mind with the beauty that surrounds me. I'm filled with energy. I immediately start my exercises before I have my breakfast, and then I start my day's work. I'm energized. I'm happy. It works. I like it. I told my family about it in the next Zoom. Yes, not only I liked it, they liked it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunshine. What a good idea. Yeah. Planting for health. And I love your song.
Thank you.
Well, next is the master of haiku, the world-renowned and only William Scott Galasso.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually going to read, I'm not going to read haiku today, though. I'm going to read the 4 poems that we're going to have in our anthology. So we'll save some of the haiku for later. And it's going to be in chronological order. So this first one is called Pixels of 50s New York. In Queens, red brick rows on poachers stamp lots flank Main Street with weeds, car exhaust, factory smoke, and sidewalk stands of steamed Sabret hot dogs. While nearby in Maspeth, where the Navy Yard stood, a terminal district of transit lies tucked between boroughs, as Manhattan's skyline dwarfs East River oil stacks, asphalt stench. Maybe on Fridays, a trip to Brooklyn, Patsy's Pizza, best in town, or Nathan's on Coney Island, where cigar smoke marinates with saltwater taffy. While girls in shorts flirt with boys in t-shirts as cigarettes rakishly dangle from lips, and a brass ring hangs from the carousel on doo-wop sticky hot summer nights. And the second poem is called Rituals. An alarm clock sounds, 6:30. I grope for the shut-off button, pry open eyes, yawn, stretch, splash cold water on skin. Then pouring coffee, I test morning air, surveying sky. Is it blue or pewter? Does air smell of snow, hint rain, promise heat? Are the clouds works by Monet or Sumi-E brushstrokes of Cirrus? Do I catch today's news, absorb its trials, postpone what's inevitable, perusing instead my iPhone before trekking to job or a hike in the hills, the sea below me? Or is this the day I make time my own and like Kerouac, pick a direction or live as children do, making up the story up as it goes without a thought of its ending? This third poem is called Gypsy Wind. This is not a summer breeze, grazing skin, tousling baby's fine head of hair, nor is it breath slewing dew from sunflowers, or beads of rain on orange lantana. It does not inspire lullabies, freshen air, whisper soliloquies, or promise sleep to troubled minds. No, this is wind, fulsome, moaning, rapacious to leaves, whipping sand, winnowing stalks of corn, cracking branches, cleaving nests from trees. This is a brawling wind, whitening waves, blackening clouds, scoring chips of paint from old wooden barns, snapping flags like towels, powering weather vanes, whirling madness, prompting plate shifts, birthing tsunamis. This is a universe reshaping itself. This next poem is called Grace Notes. Hillside wind stirs lacy leaves of pepper trees. Small birds flutter in branches. A lizard navigates red brick, slightly uneven as all things man-made. And we sip plum purple wine, inhaling notes of earth, subtle spice I cannot place but know. Tasting cherries, chocolate, a hint of cassis. And I crave nothing, need less, watching falcons glide under white clouds, blue skies over harvest time vineyards, till my fingers touch hers reflectively, this woman loved for 40 years, and I savor the wondrous now. And this is the final poem called Taken for Granted. Sanguine, I assumed my given space and time, could not foresee the tsunomic change of all I took for granted. When love was a word said in response, but rarely sung out loud. Now, having slept so long, I'm startled awake by revelry's trumpet, and learned by heart the exacting price of wisdom. Yet how else could I know its value if I never paid the cost? Now, I listen more carefully, dig deeper as eyes catch mine. Now, we blossom when we zoom, this family of mine, and we don't play beat the clock. Thank you.
Yeah, he's spectacular. He's also world renowned and a prolific author of poetry books. So thank you, Scott. Beautiful.
Thank you all, it's a pleasure.
Next, a newbie and also our membership chair and our treasurer, Nancy Brown, who will relate vignettes from her publishing process. So, Nancy, welcome to Storytelling.
Thank you, Peggy. It's good to see so many very talented authors in this club. While I am one of the newest members of the publishing club and a novice in the publishing world, I've been writing my own memoir, Full Circle, The Journey of a Wandering Soul, for over 6 years. A series of vignettes, these snippets of my life share a common thread, as is evidenced by the title. 3 of my vignettes appear in this year's Village Stories 2021, with the complete memoir scheduled to be published next year in 2022. In the vignette entitled Never Too Late, I begin with my ineptitude and lack of interest in sports while growing up, move into a significant awakening when introduced to skiing and tennis in my late 20s, and close with my passion for pickleball and my continued love of skiing today. Black and Yellow, another significant vignette in my life, illustrates how that color combination appears and reappears along with its significance throughout my life. One clear example is that my first license plate was black and yellow, and my present license plate, appropriately named Full Circle, is also black and yellow. I realized that so many of these experiences kept coming full circle in my life, and I had to write it down. The Itinerant, my final vignette in this year's Village Stories 2021, is a humorous story that signifies my love of a lifetime possession and how it followed me from age 5 until it died of a broken bridge. The dictionary defines itinerant as one who travels from place to place. This vignette is a conversation between me and the itinerant, where I express my love, my frustrations, and my sorrow to my time-treasured friend. You'll have to read it to see what the itinerant really is. Completing my own memoir was temporarily interrupted by the pandemic when I discovered my great-grandmother's century-old memoir. At my aunt and uncle's 70th anniversary in February 2020, my cousin asked me a puzzling question. "Have you read Nanny's book?" "Nanny's book?" I replied. "No, tell me about it." She then brought out a 24-inch by 12-inch by 6-inch high metal box filled with a 580-page original typewritten manuscript hidden from most in my family for decades. After poring over this manuscript written in her wandering stream of consciousness format, I discovered 3 themes and decided this was a story that needed to be told. In this priceless treasure, Nanny details how she mothered over 160 babies in a 13-year period, never taking 1 penny for her work, but feeling directed by God to first of all bathe, then feed, clothe, nurture, and most of all love unwanted babies. Her final labor of love was the dedication of her baby nursery to the memory of her son, Kenzie, who died at age 17 from black diphtheria. This 20-month pause in my own writing enabled me to publish my first book, My Babies, My Promise, The Journey of My Soul, The Louise Sullivan Story, now available on Amazon. After it was all complete, I returned to writing my own memoir, and I made another full circle discovery. The similarities in the title of Nanny's story, My Baby's My Promise, The Journey of My Soul, which I never knew before, to that of my own full circle, The Journey of a Wandering Soul. This, I decided, may just be the final vignette in my own memoir, due out next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Actually, I'm half through the book. It's addictive. Yeah, every day I sneak away to read a couple of chapters. And welcome to Storytelling. Yeah, you guys, you'll have to check it out. So next, this man's story will blow you away. With no further ado, A Drink with a Future King, ? By Jack Mullen.
Thank you, Peggy, and thank you, and hello, everybody. Yes, as Peggy said, I title my story, A Drink with a Future King, ? Now, you old timers that remember Dragnet 50 years ago, you'll understand why Sergeant Joe Friday suggested that I start my story this way. My name is Sergeant Jack Mullen. I was working the day watch out of intelligence unit on the San Diego Police Department. It was a warm day in San Diego. It was March 1974. What? A call for me from Scotland Yard. Inspector John McLean, put him on. Hello, Inspector. What can San Diego Police Department do for Scotland Yard? What's that? Low profile security for the Prince of Wales when he comes to visit San Diego in a few days. You got it. Yes, extra low profile. My team was pretty good at low profile and high profile. High profile for President Ford, Governor Jerry Brown. Low profile, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, Chief Rabbi Shlomo Gorn, and now apparently the Prince of Wales. Yes, what's that, John? Do we know a good steakhouse? Yes, we do. Okay, can I summarize here? In 3 days, we will meet you at dockside at the naval station. The Prince is coming in on the HMS Her Majesty's ship Jupiter. He's the communications officer. He's doing his Navy time. Okay, we'll have 2 undercover cars, 2 walkie-talkies. We'll have a car for you to drive and the Prince, the passenger in, and my partner and I will have the other car. Okay, yeah. My partner, by the way, is named Rufinho Yaptango Jr. We'll call him Junior. We'll see you in 3 days at dockside. Okay, John, take care. And so we did. Junior and I went to dockside and we met Inspector John McLean from Scotland Yard. We made small cop talk for about 2 minutes, the same all over the world. And down the gangplank he came by himself, resplendent in his Navy uniform. 25 years young, hanging bag over his shoulder, down the gangplank, shook hands, cordial guy, nice guy, no airs about him whatsoever. We got to the car, and that's where Junior and I discovered that where Charles grew up, the trunk of a car was called a boot. Scotland Yard had given us the agenda for the next 6 hours. Surfing, a date with an admiral's daughter, dinner at Lubach Steakhouse, all good. We drove the 2 cars across the Coronado Bridge to the island of Coronado, separated from San Diego's downtown by San Diego Bay. The Navy owns half of the island, and on a deserted beach was a small Admiral's Cabana, which had been vacated for us and reserved. Scotland Yard and the Prince went in and changed into wetsuits. When they came out, they grabbed 2 surfboards off of the patio that had been set aside for them and really raced about 150 meters into the water. Junior and I sat on the patio. Junior and I went back almost 20 years. We'd had a seat in the front row of life, working patrol and the vice squad and this and that. And he said, "Not too bad, Jack." I said, "What?" He said, "A cop who's an Irish kid from the Bronx and a cop who's half Japanese, half Hawaiian. And we're sitting in the sun watching the Prince of Wales splashing in the water. And when they had finished splashing, they came in and showered and changed. And when they came into the living room, the Prince of Wales rubbed his hands together. There was a Navy steward in a neat white starched waiter's jacket stationed at a small curved bar in the living room. And Prince Charles said, 4 gin and tonics all around, please." Oh, 7 years earlier, working armed robbery, Jen and I had gotten into a little bit of trouble. I said, "Sir, it's a gracious offer, but Junior and I, we can't drink, we're working." And the Prince of Wales said, "Yeah, you're working, but you're working for me. We're just going to have one." And we did. We stood, we did not sit. We stood in the living room in a tight circle, like 4 strangers meeting at a cocktail party might do. We clinked glasses, we toasted the Queen. Prince Charles was really interested in what it was like to be an American cop. Junior and I were interested in what it was like to hang out at Buckingham Palace. We had the one drink. We drove directly to an admiral's house in the residential portion of Coronado. Scotland Yard and Junior and I waited on the sidewalk. Charles knocked on the door, went in. Sometime later, he came out in the company of a very lovely young woman, very gracious, very polite. Now Scotland Yard has 2 passengers in his car. We drive to the steakhouse. Scotland Yard and Junior and I take a table 2 removed from the dating couple. We did not eat. And no, nobody at Lubbock's recognized him as the Prince of Wales. I will tell you, there appeared to be some serious sweet talk going on around the candlelight of the dating couple's table. When the 5 of us walked across the parking lot to leave, Scotland Yard takes me aside. "Jack, we got a problem." I said, "What, John?" He said, "He wants to drive." I said, "What? That's okay. It's okay with me." He said, you don't understand. He drives like crap." I said, "Oh, well, look, he's your man. If you decide to let him drive, it's going to be pretty easy because we come out of the parking lot on the harbor, 1 left turn, 1 block to Grape, left turn, 3 signal lights, and we're on the on-ramp to Interstate 5 South. And from there, Coronado is about your 2nd exit. And it would have been easy, except that when he left the exit ramp, he cut off 2 cars trying to get onto the freeway lane. And yes, a highway patrolman lit us up. Red and blue lights. The chippy was trying to get our car to yield to the right so he could get at his violator car. Yaptango Jr., driving our car, fishes his badge out of his pocket, waves it out the window, gets the chippy's attention. The chippy lowers his passenger window, and Junior says, quote, "We're protecting your violator car. It's the Prince of Wales. He drives like crap." And the chippy didn't miss a beat. He said, "He sure does." And with that, his lights went off and he darted off into the night. We darted back to the Admiral's house, and to this day, I doubt if Prince Charles knows that a highway patrolman was trying to pull him over. When we got to the house, we were told, "Thank you. We were done for the evening. We'd see him tomorrow." So now, my question of you folks is this: did Junior and I have a gin and tonic with the future King of England, or did we have a drink with the father of the future King of England? And I thank you for listening to my story.
Sure.
Tell you it would blow you away. And a true story. Wow, Jack, I bet you had some great experiences with this one. Anyway, next is a newbie to storytelling and our secretary. And she's going to tell you about her experience on jury duty. So, welcome, Marcia Hackett.
Thank you. I wrote my piece after the final deadline for submission this year for the Village Stories 2021 about my experience in July this year, hoping that maybe what I have to say might help some others who may have to perform this civil duty. It's called jury duty. Members of the jury, I have laid out the legal instructions relevant to this case. You are now instructed to deliberate and come up with a unanimous verdict, either guilty or not guilty, and return your verdict signed to the bailiff. So said the judge regarding this criminal case. This was my fourth jury trial, the most interesting due to the nature of the case. 2 charges of indecent exposure in public places. In fact, at 2 local grocery stores late at night. Jury selection had been a lengthy process, starting with an initial postcard notification 6 weeks before call-in to the jury office to see if I had been selected. Call-in happened 4 nights in a row, starting at 5 p.m. on the first designated day. Each night I was asked to call again the next night. Finally, on the 4th night, I was told to report to court at 8 a.m. the following day. Meanwhile, my personal schedule had been thrown into flux. I didn't know from day to day if I would be able to carry out my usual daily activities. But I really wanted to do my civic duty despite the inconvenience. Jury selection took most of the first day as various groups of about 20 people out of approximately 150 in the jury room were sent to different courtrooms to be questioned by the judge. Prospective jurors were excused if they had a prepaid vacation during the time of the trial or any other significant conflict to serving. Once in the courtroom, all potential jurors were asked the exact same questions: name, marital or partnership status, children and ages, occupation, spouse's occupation, prior jury service, criminal or civil, did you reach a verdict, friends or family practicing criminal law, and finally, friends, or relatives in law enforcement. Listening to folks from all walks of life answer these questions provided some very amusing entertainment. Defense and prosecution attorneys then met privately with the judge to accept or reject certain jurors. We never heard their reasons for acceptance or rejection. When all 12 of us were seated and 2 alternates selected, the latter being required to listen to the entire case until deliberation, the judge talked with us about the specific charges in the case. He instructed us not to look up anything online or elsewhere regarding cases of indecent exposure, or to discuss the particulars in this case with other jurors, spouses, or significant others until deliberation day. He then excused us until the first day of testimony. Witnesses for the prosecution always testify first in criminal cases, followed by defense witnesses. I was impressed by the use of electronic visuals, such as video footage of the actual crimes. In other words, store surveillance tapes, printed testimony for the jury of the victim's statements, and police lineup mugshots from which the victims identified the defendant. In my opinion, during the 3-day trial, the judge did an outstanding job of ensuring the comfort of the witnesses on the stand, several of whom were a bit frightened, and the same comfort for the jury. Masks were required at all times, even on occasional breaks. Once the trial concluded, the jury reported to the deliberation room. We elected a 4-person, a volunteer who said she had done the job on a previous case. First thing, she asked us to write our personal verdict regarding each count on an anonymous slip of paper and hand it to her. Within 3 minutes, our jury unanimously voted guilty on both counts. The defendant had knowingly exposed himself to the 2 solo women in the produce section of the stores. Then, before submitting our verdict to the bailiff, we discussed for 45 minutes why we had voted as we did. It felt good to me to know we all agreed so quickly, especially after our discussion. We handed our decision to the bailiff, then proceeded to the courtroom to hear it read aloud by the clerk. The judge thanked the jury, said we can now discuss the case as it's part of public record, and released us, our civic duty completed. We never did hear what the penalty was for the defendant. I only hope it was just. Thank you.
Wow, good story. How many of you have been on a jury? I was on one once, but anyway, good story, Marcia, and an invaluable team member for Village Stories. Anyway, our next participant is the iconic entertainer and prolific author who will sing his own original song, composer, and will tell you why he hates football with the story about an Army-Navy game in 1963. So welcome, Phil Silverman.
Thank you. You see, I don't hate football. I despise it. There's a difference. Now, this song is relatable to the theme. Took a walk in the park. My girlfriend, she won't talk. But now I see is not about me. I'm all alone in the world. If they send me out to war, you can drive my Cadillac car. But now I see it's not about me. I'm all alone in the world. If I leave this mortal coil, rotate my tires and check my oil, but now I see it's not about me. I'm all alone in the world. I was alone in the world. Thank you very much. I'm all alone in the world. I want to go back to October 12th, 1963 for the Army and Navy game in New Haven, Connecticut. And it follows the theme of the song, I'm all alone in the world. You see, me and my pal Jojo felt all alone among 22,000 football fans in New Haven, Connecticut. The reason we went to the game really was of the generosity of my friend Jojo's Uncle Joe, and we wanted to do something nice for Joe Silverman's son, Phil, that's me, because Joe Silverman had a habit of taking me and Jojo to many Met games during the 1963 baseball season. Yeah, we felt quite alone in New Haven, Connecticut. I found the degree that my friend hated football and that we really took a step up in our friendship. 22,000 people at the Army and Navy game. I'll get to that a little bit later. I want to do a little prefacing for you nice folks, though. And it's really in a positive vein. You know, I say hate football and all that stuff. The reason, and it's a positive thing, the reason I hate football to this day is, you see, football's a cold weather sport, and cold weather back in the day meant you're back at school, and school was pretty bad. I hated school. Baseball is a beautiful weather sport, and guess what? You're on vacation when you go to those Friday night doubleheaders. Also, in baseball, I do like rugged sports, but you see, in baseball, it's more of a gentleman's sport. Nothing embarrassing about that. It's like Gary Cooper compared to John Wayne. You know, see, in baseball, you're safe at home. You wear a cap, right? You have teams named Orioles, Cardinals. In football, you have Bulldogs and Lions. You don't wear a cap, you wear a helmet. Where's your helmet? Sorry. In football, you have a blitzkrieg, sudden death, vice tackle, 2 guys on 1. Sometimes, if you're lucky and it's in a mud game, you play in mud, you get 3 guys on 1. You see, you might say, well, what's the big deal? You know, boxing is more violent. That's true, but boxing is fair. So when you cheat in boxing, it's face to face, it's fair. Also want to say one thing, and this is for all of us, and we understand it. Football makes no sense. It's the only sport where heterosexual men are allowed to get worked up over men in tights. Also, I want to say, that's funny. In see this, I want to also say in baseball, you see this thing, the shape? This has many cosmological counterparts. Look at it, looks like a planet, doesn't it? Planet, a star. It's like a planet, maybe an asteroid. Now this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Look at that. It's not aerodynamic. It has no cosmological counterpart. Another thing you see in baseball, what makes sense as an adult playing, you want to get rid of the ball. I'm going to stand up a second. You see this? Look, you want to get rid of this. I don't want the ball. catcher, the pitcher, the first baseman, also in tennis, ping pong and bowling. I don't want the ball. I don't want it. The football. Football. Excuse me, thank you. This, they want the ball. Well, the quarterback is cool. He wants to get rid of the ball. Now, in football, you suck it in. I don't want to suck it in. I don't want this thing. I don't want the ball. All right, now getting back. What those Alka-Seltzers? No, just kidding. October 12th, 1963, the Army and Navy game. Guess what, folks? It was not the Army and Navy game. It was the Ivy and Ivy game. It was not Army and Navy. It was Columbia University versus Yale. Me and JoJo. Joe changed his name from JoJo to Joe to save time. That was later. Also, our Italian friend, for years, he hassled me. He says, Joe is not Irish and Austrian. He's Italian. Why? Because his name ends in a vowel. I never understood that. When he was 54 years old, he used to hit me with that. Here we are, October 12th, 1963, hating football and trying not to express that to Uncle Joe and Aunt Pat. And it was cold, sitting on cement. Guy in front of me wearing a tweed jacket. And one thing I can tell you that I hate worse than football is wearing tweed. Got it? He's wearing tweed, smoking a cigar. Wasn't even a good cigar. That was after the ban on the Cubans. I should say Cuban cigars, the Havana cigars. Wow. We're depressed. We're back in school. It's the 7th grade. It's not like the 6th grade where I was the class clown and everybody loved it. No more class clown. Anyway, I'm getting to the finish, folks. 2 weeks before, Sandy Koufax of the Dodgers struck out Mickey Mantle 3 times in 1 inning. I don't know what happened. I'm depressed about that. Mantle missed 2/3 of the season. So we're watching this game. May I summarize by saying, the Depression started. We found out it wasn't Army and Navy, which I didn't want to see anyway. Turned out to be Ivy versus Ivy. So let me say the song All Alone related to me and JoJo, 22,000 people and 2 football haters at the non-Army and Navy game. I hope you got my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can relate to it. Thanks to everybody.
Oh, now you see why he's our chief entertainer. He's good. Well, next is our famous and inimitable Ellyn Maybe. Ellyn is a widely anthologized poet, musician, and lyricist. She's so famous, in fact, that poets even mimic her. So, adelante, Ellyn.
Oh, hi, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful afternoon. Let me know, can you hear me fine? Is okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Wonderful to hear everyone and to see everyone here too. The first poem I'm gonna read is called Zooming Through the World. Gratitude to the events happening around the world on Zoom, listening to readings, lectures, and concerts from all over the sphere is a wondrous thing. The logistics of turning on the computer and being in a library in Brooklyn, a museum in Portugal, a concert in Scandinavia, all is possible. Walking into Zoom is like a world encapsulated amidst this hum of time in an askew Dali universe, melting clocks, Van Gogh sky, stars lifting their ears to whisper at us like a seashell understanding how the world has become tiny like a thimble and large as an ocean eternity, simultaneously seeking events in connection with all the ancient and new solitude, blending in a dance, learning new steps, twirling through the hemisphere, the future wearing invisible ink, unclear and profound. And the other piece I'm going to read is a poem I wrote for Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she passed away. It's called RBG. There's a flurry of judicial collars lining the clouds. Every decision and every dissent stays in the air like musical breath. With your penchant for opera, you were a fermata of wisdom, holding on through the ravages and chaos, pioneer and epic, full of verve and mind-shattering strength, wearing resistance and resilience on your soul. Supreme being, super shiro, legendary icon for good. You will remain larger than life in our memories. Breathing your last breath on Rosh Hashanah is said to be the way of the righteous. You are notorious, thrilling, doing what you were put on earth to do. You leave behind stardust and legal briefs and push-ups and tenacity. You were the first in your class. You were one of a kind. You are remembered with respect. The opera glasses hang in the air, waiting for more and more and more to see how you became music. Through the sky, wisdom sings our hopes awake. Your legacy still lives on earth in every constellation that needs truth. Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you are so dearly missed. It is now up to us to put our collars on and walk into the future with the opera whispering in our ear like a ferocious future in crescendo. It is now up to us to sing your memory home. So thanks, everyone. It's a great afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
When my husband used to ask when we went to poetry events, will Ellyn be there?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Anyway, and finally, it's me, Peggy P. Edwards, president of the Publishing Club. And I was inspired last night on every single news channel was the same story. And so I wrote Pilgrimage, and I'm sure you'll figure out what inspired me. Pilgrimage by Peggy P. Edwards, September 21st, 2021. Why are the people running away? Thousands are fleeing, children leading the way, leaving their homes, leaving it all in Central America. What is the reason to walk night and day, coming our way and begging to stay? What in the world led them astray? What are their countries trying to say? Climate change, drug wars, greed, and decay. Wake up, there's no time to delay. The reckoning is upon us this very day. Ignore the warnings, and soon we will pay. The children are fleeing, they're leading the way. And with that, it's the end of this iconic and wonderful storytelling event. 9 so far. Let's make it 19. And I'll leave you, after I'm finished, Sunshine will take over for a minute, telling you about village stories. And like I say, thank goodness for Sunshine. But I'll leave you with 3 things we can all do. We can do something kind, we can improve, and we can discover something exquisite, like the petals of an orchid, or the perfection of a feather. So thanks for joining us. This is such a fine event. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, 9 spectacular authors. Adios, goodbye, till next year.